Just because you don't take insurance doesn't mean your clients can't use it. Mentaya is an out of network billing platform that gets clients to get back 70% back on therapy without the therapist lifting a finger. I've checked out their product and it's truly a game changer. It's what I wish I had in my private pay practice. They handle literally everything so you can focus on what matters: therapy. Go to practiceofthepractice.com/Mentaya to try it out for free. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/MENTAYA to get started for free. Mentaya is amazing if you have private pay clients that want to bill their insurance. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 969. Well, I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I am so glad that you are here. If you missed it, we had Level Up Week, our first one of 2024. We'll have another one in the fall. So if you missed that and you are interested in getting any of those recordings, you can still grab those over at practiceofthepractice.com/level up. Just give us your email and you will get access to those for a limited time. We are going to be releasing those fully to our membership communities. So if you are in the membership, you don't have to scurry on over there. It'll be in Circle. You'll have access to it. Just as a reminder, we closed our memberships out. At the time of this recording, Level Up Week has not occurred, but I am assuming that we had a record number of people join. That seems to be the trend that we're seeing. We're doing a lot more pay-per-click advertising. We're also have some people that are just working directly with therapists to get them interested. With our new website, it's been really awesome to just streamline that process for people and to just make it a little bit easier to get involved. And for me, it's sure, like, we want to grow the business, but to ultimately have hundreds and hundreds of therapists that are at each phase of practice, starting, growing a group practice, adding their first clinician, maybe even doing public speaking, getting a book, that we're in community together. I know that loneliness is one of those things that is so predominant in our field. And really, this is the community I wish I had had when I started my practice and, when I had my group practice. I wish I had people that I could have bounced things off of. But those memberships are closed, so make sure that you have that on your radar for when they open up again in the fall. Thanks so much for coming to all the Level Up Week things that you did. Well, I am so excited today. I'm hanging out with Dr. Eric Recker. Dr. Eric is a dentist, a husband, a father, keynote speaker, elite success coach, author, pilot, mountain climber, and recovering triathlete. In his second half of life, he is committing to helping people shorten the distance to becoming their best version and learning to win the now. Eric, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. So glad to have you here today.
Joe, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, before we go any farther, we started to geek out before we started recording here about your Baby Yoda Grogu in the background and asking about Galaxy's Edge and going to Disney. My family just got back from that, and I did the Rise of the Resistance ride, and my mind is absolutely blown. And we were about to geek out about that. I'm like, let's just talk about that on the podcast.
Oh man, it was so much fun. So my son, who is now a freshman in college, was able to march with his high school marching band in the Tournament of Roses parade. So that's what brought us there. But once we knew we were going there, my older son, who was going with us, said, "Hey, Dad, do you think maybe we could go to Disney and build lightsabers?" And I said, "You bet we can." That was one of the easiest yeses I've ever given. So we showed up there. We were able to ride a ride with our younger son who was there with his friends, but we also got to build lightsabers, interact with the different characters as they were going around. The rides are incredible. I mean, I kind of understand why it costs so much to go there because the experiences are just their lifetime experiences. So fun.
Yeah, it's insane. So like my daughters, they were into watching Mandalorian. We've watched some of the other Star Wars films, and it was like we were on a movie set. It was incredible just what they had done. But they did the build a droid thing, which was great for their age. And so they got to pick out what type of unit they wanted. One wanted to do an R2 unit, the other wanted to do like the BB unit, and they get to pick all the colors and then assemble it. And they give the kids, a drill to put it together, and then it all syncs together. And it's just was such a fun experience. I know for me, to link this a little bit into business, I just noticed how when you do something really, really well, and have that level of detail, like that just stands out in any market. And just seeing even how Disney cross promoted a lot of their different things. So, you're like on their buses going places, and they have all these different shows coming out on Disney Plus that they're promoting. They have all these different ways that they're kind of keeping you in their ecosystem. And there's a lot of, critique people could have over the storylines, especially for young women. But what do you think from a business standpoint? Any things that you noticed, or were you just totally full on Jedi when you were there?
No, I was really noticed the immersive experience. So I think it's important when you're in something like that to be as much in it as you could. What do I mean by that? I mean, we got to experience all of the things, making the lightsabers, and then they tell you you can buy extra crystals, and that never would have been something that I would have had any interest in. And then found myself there at the counter thinking, boy, do I buy one or two extra crystals? And then we're drinking blue milk, the double suns and drinking
In the
blue milk.
cantina. Yeah.
Yes, all of those things. And I had kind of a similar thought. I said, wow, they've got it figured out. You walk in here and you want to do all the things and you want to be involved with all the things. And it's really spectacular how they've been able to do that. But then, to take that back to my dental practice, even on a much smaller scale, it's because when you're there, you feel like you're a part of something. How can we make our patients that come in feel like they're a part of something? How can we make them feel like they're important, like they're part of the story, that we want to be part of their story in the midst of that? So, Disney is brilliant at doing that. In their customer
Yeah.
service, they're renowned for that. It just all ties together. You can definitely see it when you're there.
Well, I would love to hear a little bit about your business journey as a dentist, and then getting into speaking, doing keynotes, kind of focusing on burnout and being present. Let's just start with, what did early career look like for you as a dentist?
Yeah, so I have to go back a little bit farther back to actually my elementary days on the playground. I'm from Iowa, and in the early 80s, recess kickball was life. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah, all I wanted to do at recess was play kickball. We'd go out to the baseball field and pick teams, and then we'd play. Well, on numerous occasions, I was told that I was not allowed to play. Not that I was picked last, I was not allowed to play because I was told I wasn't good enough. And it just crushed me. Right now, I'm 6'5". I'm pretty athletic. I've accomplished a lot of things, but I was pretty husky back then. I was rough around the edges. I wasn't very athletic. And so I remember standing on the side of that field as either a second or third grader and just making a pact with myself that I was going to be so freaking good at everything that I ever did that no one would ever not pick me. And so what happened is, I'm sure you can imagine, I pretty much overshot everything that I ever tried to do. So nothing was ever good enough for me in middle school. I didn't see myself as good enough through high school. College, dental school, it wasn't enough that I was in the top 15 in my class. I had to be in the top 10. It wasn't good enough for me to do a 5K. I had to go all the way through marathon, triathlon. I started all the way through Ironman, and nothing was ever good enough. And so I found myself in this place of burnout because I was just pushing everything to the max. When I came back and started being a dentist, I practiced with my dad. And that was a wonderful privilege for me. But my dad bought another dental practice and merged our two practices. So from day one, I was 6 weeks booked out. So I hit the ground running, and I really hit the ground sprinting because I was not ready for that, but I had to figure it out because that's what my schedule looked like. And so it was sort of the perfect storm for burnout. I found myself with just way too much on my plate. And because I also struggled with feeling like I had to be everything to everyone, when somebody asked me to do something, I said yes. So when I started really feeling the effects of burnout, I kind of up until this point, I felt like everything I experienced was just normal. Being a dentist, being a professional, it was normal that you were stressed all the time. It was normal that you didn't sleep well. And I even felt maybe it was normal that I was having some chest pain and some heart palpitations. But what wasn't normal was when the panic attacks started hitting. And then during that time, I finally realized the killer equation, and that was the fact that I was overcommitted and I wasn't taking care of myself. And I've been through 3 rounds of burnout in my career because I'm a slow learner. And through all of those, that equation was the same. So my goal now, and we can get more into the coaching and speaking, I got really close to selling my practice and walking away because I was so burned out. But I found out
Mm,
when that did not work out, I found out I needed to figure out a way to make this sustainable. And also, what I learned is one of my big whys is that I want to help other people on their journey. I want to meet people right where they are on their burnout journey, or hopefully where they're very early on it, and help figure out some habits, some systems that we can put in place so they don't go as far down the road as I did.
mm. Now, yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. I mean, I experienced some bullying. Definitely that achiever side. It's almost similar to when, someone's overweight and they make a fat joke before other people can make the joke. The like, I'm going to out achieve you so that there's not anything for you to bully me on. And I think that a lot of people, for different reasons that follow this podcast, are higher achievers maybe than the average sort. And maybe it's, self-selective in that, entrepreneurs maybe are going to take a little more risk, or they see the potential, or who knows why. Um, when for you did you start to find different either coping skills or ways to think about achievement that were healthier than how you were doing it before?
Yeah, so it actually took me till about 2000. So I started really struggling with burnout, at least identified it in about the 2012-13 range. And it really was the top of a mountain in Colorado where I really came to face with the fact that if I didn't know why I was climbing the mountain, I wasn't going to find the answer at the top. So I was at the top of Mount Princeton. It was a Wednesday. We had driven out the day before in a rental RV. You know the kind, the one that's super obvious that you have a rental, right? It's on the side of
Yeah,
the
it's like
RV.
rentrv.com or something like that.
Absolutely. It's like, no, we didn't rent this. Well, it says it on the side of the RV. So we drove it out from Iowa all the way to Colorado on a Tuesday, and then we did what Flatlanders do. We got up the next morning and we hiked to 14er. This was Wednesday, and I was planning on doing the Leadville 100 mountain bike race on
Oh,
Saturday.
Leadville. My partner their family has a house up there.
Seriously.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
seriously, we were just there like a year ago.
isn't it amazing out there?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so I had been training for this bike race and I was in ridiculously good shape, really the best shape of my life. And so I just about jogged up that mountain. My brother in law didn't get up there quite as fast as me, so I had some time to just stand up there and look around. And that was the phrase that hit me. If you don't know why you're climbing the mountain, you're not going to find the answer at the top. So I really had to stop and pause and think, okay, what does that mean to me? I was chasing the next achievement. I was chasing the next thing. There was always going to be a higher mountain. There was always going to be another thing to accomplish. But in that moment, I realized that I needed to know why I was doing it. I needed to take a step back and say, okay, why are you pushing yourself so hard? Why is nothing good enough for you? What are we going to do here that's going to make this sustainable? So basically, what that did is it cured me from these crazy endurance events that I had been doing, the Ironman triathlons. And then we had ridden our bikes across the state of Iowa in a day multiple times. It's about 250 miles to raise money for a charity that does adoptions. It was always, if there was a bigger and a better, it was always, yeah, sign me up. I don't care how busy I am. I'm going to figure out how to do this. But then that's when I finally stepped back and said, do I really need all this? Is the mountaintop worth all of the training? And why am I pushing myself so hard? So that was really when I started to make a shift in how I saw life and in my mindset.
Mm. Now, so you start with, why am I actually doing these things? What's the goal of them? Were there things that you found helpful to reset some of that, like practical things?
Yeah, so I didn't really get it right at that point. I stepped back from doing endurance events like crazy, and to be honest, I got a little bored. So the thing about those endurance events is I knew what I was doing. I knew I had this carrot hanging in front of me, so I had to work hard. I had to do this. So then I kind of overshot the other way. I kind of went internal and went back into pushing myself really hard through my practice, doing a ton of extra continuing education, pursuing an advanced degree, and then I started spending a lot of time collecting baseball cards and collecting baseball photos. That was kind of something that I had done in the past, and I kind of went back towards that. And what I really learned about myself is there's this incredible energy that I have that has to be channeled somewhere. And so I had been overshooting with these endurance events. I pulled back and then I started overshooting in my practice, started overshooting in some of these other things, and again started facing some burnout again. And that was when I really felt like I needed to step away from the practice. I just was in my mind so much. I was struggling. I didn't see a way out. We were getting close to COVID at that point. My oldest son was going to graduate high school. It felt like the walls were closing in, and so we actually had this huge trip to Spain that we were going to take in the spring of 2020. And this was going to be this awesome spring break trip for his senior year. This was going to be this time where we were really going to be able to connect before the rest of the year was going to go really fast. And then that got taken away from us, like so many other things. And so it was at that point that I decided that it was time to start sharing the journey with other people. It was then that I realized, something's not working here. And we had to close our office for 8 weeks, and so during that time, I felt this thing that I now call the false sense of urgency that just was constantly attacking me. I have to learn all these things on these webinars. I have to learn infection control. I have to learn PPP loans. I have to learn all of these new things when we come back. And oh, by the way, we don't know when we're going to come back. And my head was just swirling and spinning. So that's when I learned one of my coping mechanisms, which has been huge to this day. I committed to 30 minutes of quiet every day. So no matter what was going on, as I got into my day, I set a timer for 30 minutes, silenced my phone, silenced all notifications, sat in a quiet room, and just let my thoughts run and spent time in the present moment. And that, to this day, I don't do 30 minutes every day, but the times that I'm able to incorporate quiet into my life right now, I think that is one of those superpower recharging things that we can do for ourselves.
Mm. As a therapist, I can tell you from experience that having the right EHR is an absolute lifeline. I recommend using therapy notes. They make billing, scheduling, note taking, telehealth, and e prescribe incredibly easy. Best of all, they offer live telephone support that's available 7 days a week. You don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research and see for yourself. Therapy Notes is the #1 highest rated EHR system available today, with a 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com and on Google. All you have to do is click the link below or type promo code Joe on their website over at therapynotes.com and receive a special 2-month trial absolutely free. Again, that's therapynotes.com and use promo code Joe on the website. If you're coming from another EHR, Therapy Notes will also import your demographic data quick and easy at no cost, so you can get started right away. Trust me, don't waste any more of your time and try Therapy Notes. Just use promo code Joe at checkout. What do you think it is about slowing down and having quiet that helps you?
Well, I think if we look back in history, it wasn't very long ago where it was harder to be distracted than it is now. We kind of had these natural quiet times when we didn't have our devices. If we were driving somewhere and we stopped at a stoplight, we would, maybe the radio was on, but it was a natural time to be quiet. When we were in the line at the grocery store to check out, it was just natural to be quiet and just sit there and be patient until it was your turn. Maybe you looked at a tabloid, but you were probably pretty quiet at that point. Now with our phones, I think we've just lost so much of that quiet space. And so I think our brains crave that. I know mine does. I think our brains crave some quiet space. So when we actually create quiet, once we get past that uncomfortable feeling, it's so rich for our brains.
Yeah, I agree. I think that also when we slow down like that, when we take the time to, whether it's meditate or hike or just intentionally set down our devices, that boredom spurs on, being creative. It spurs on finding something to do, to I just was actually, when we went to Disney, my parents went with us, and there was a night that they watched the kids, and Claire and I went out and just went out for dinner. And my older daughter was out with my dad, and then my younger daughter was with my mom. And my mom noticed that, my daughter was watching TV and my mom was on the phone. And she's like, we were like concurrently like doing things not together, but we were all the way in Florida together watching TV. And so my mom said, do you want to learn how to play Rummy 500 Rummy? And my 9-year-old said, yeah. And so they played cards. And then they also like played another game that she likes called Garbage. That's a card game. And it was interesting. The last night before we all kind of left each other to come back home, we kind of did a little debrief of some of our favorite moments of the trip. And for my 9-year-old, she said that playing cards was one of her favorite moments. Like, we're at Disney, we're seeing all these things, and playing cards with my mom was one of her highlights. And it was all because my mom chose to put down her phone and to say, let's turn off the TV and let's find something to do together. And I think that, we have so many things at our disposal. But the reality is, so many of us feel lonelier than ever. So many of us feel like we're not connected. And, to me, I think that's such a great point to just say, like, let's just be a little quieter once in a while.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think that it's so important for us in our lives that we have good quality relationships and that we have quiet. And I have a number of people that I know who are in the mental health space, and I ask them regularly, what are a couple things that people could do to actually get them out of your practices? And putting the phones down, I just hear it over and over and over. If people would stay off their devices or even be on their devices a reasonable amount of time and choose things like being in relationship with people instead or being quiet, that a lot of the problems would go away, would solve themselves on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. What other kind of habits or things did you incorporate in similar to having more quiet?
Yeah, one of the huge things that I changed, and this certainly doesn't work for everyone, but we moved about a year after COVID hit. And during that time, what I really loved about it, we lived in a rental for a year. And while we were living in that rental, we didn't have any yard work, didn't have to do any snow removal, didn't really have to do any of those kind of things. And I lived a little bit closer to my workplace. So I started riding my bike to work every day. And now that we've moved, I now live 2 miles away from my workplace. And as many days as possible, I walk to work. And the thing that I love about doing that is, one, is just tremendous health benefits, just being outside and moving. I haven't had more than 1 day cold since we've moved here. It's really quite amazing. And during that time, sometimes I'll listen to music, but most of the time I'm just outside and I'm in the presence of nature, and I'm just enjoying the fresh air. We even had a day here in Iowa a couple days ago where we had a -40 wind chill, and I still walk to work just because I have enough gear for that. And it was amazing. And my mindset around work and my mindset around life since I've been moving and outside has been life changing for me. So I think anytime we can get outside and just experience fresh air and being outside is great. Anytime we can be in relationship with people, I think that it is so true that we're better together. I like to coach people on trying to have at least a couple inner circle friends, or 2 a.m. friends, as I like to describe them. Being in relationships with people to the level that if you needed them at 2 a.m., they would be there for you and you would be there for them. Another thing with our phones, I just like to ask myself the question, why am I picking this up? So if I'm only picking it up out of boredom for something to do, I try to have a reason for picking my phone up. So I think that has been a good thing. And then another thing is just trying really to be intentional about being in the present moment. I think we are stuck in the past. Our minds are stuck in the past with the things that happened to us or the things that we did, or we're worried about the future. And when we are in either one of those places, we miss out on the one thing that's guaranteed, and that's the moment that's right in front of us. So that's kind of where the win the now came from. And I always try to encourage people to live present in their own lives.
Mm. Let's talk a little bit about that. So we kind of talked a lot about the burnout side and some strategies there. Why do you think it matters to focus more on the present?
Because the present is what we have. So if we always find ourselves in the present moment, we're not going to miss out on as much life as we do. The future is going to happen, and it's important that we plan for the future. But if we're always in that mode and we miss the moment right in front of us, then we miss out on the richness of life. So what I like to talk about is breaking your day into the different nows that you experience. So, what do you mean by that? So, I'm a dentist. I break my day into 15-minute sections. So, that's how my team schedules me. Sometimes it'll be one unit of 15 minutes up to maybe 8 if it's a longer procedure. And so then I think about, what does a win look like in that present moment? It might look like a great interaction with the patient. It might look like helping someone who's very anxious get settled down before we do a procedure. It might look like a really good technical procedure. A lot of times it might look like a great conversation with a patient, because being in relationship with my patients is my favorite part of what I do. So then you look at your day and you figure out what wins look like, and then you try to get those wins in those moments. Sometimes you're going to take a loss. And when you do take a loss, it's important to note that, I always have piece of paper in my pocket for notes that I have to write down throughout my day. I'll just make a note of that. And then when I get a chance, I'll revisit it and I'll just ask myself one question: what can I learn from that loss? And in doing that, I'll try to turn it into a win. And then throughout the day, hopefully you stack a lot of wins together, and then you're not as focused on the losses that you had. So when you have that mentality, then you can even carry that home to the dinner table. What does a win look like around the dinner table? Well, it might look like some engaging conversation. It might look like we're not on our devices. It might look like making future plans, or just enjoying the flavors of a great meal. And then once we start to get that and we start to work on that over time, then our relationships get better, our mindset gets better. And I feel, at least for me, worry, fear, stress, and anxiety decrease when I'm in the midst of that.
Mm. Yeah, I know for me, just that idea of being present, to really like let go of the attachment of what has to come for me to be happy. So for example, when I travel, I can't control the weather. Michael Singer's podcast has been a great resource around just thinking about traffic and weather as the two things that can best help you be more mindful and present, because you literally have no control over either of them. And it's you saying, I think people should drive the way I think they should drive. And if they don't, then I'm going to be mad. There's terrible drivers everywhere. I might be one of them. I might be someone's like terrible driver. And so just that opportunity to say, I have zero control over this situation and I'm going to let it unfold. Like for example, I mentioned that we went, to Hollywood Studios. I mean, this is a trip that we'd been planning for a while. It was a big Christmas present. My parents came all the way. I've been a Star Wars fan forever. The first time that I kicked as my mom was pregnant was during Star Wars. So it's like, this was going to be so exciting. And I wake up on the morning of Star Wars to do the 7 a.m. fast pass, lightning lane, Genie Plus, blah, 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 and I feel queasy and I end up puking like 6 times, just like total gut issues. And I have to lay in bed till probably 10:30 to even feel like I can sit up and not just lose it. While my kids and my parents go into Hollywood Studios, and I'm like, I don't even know if I can do this. And even going to, Rise of the Resistance, we're reading what all this it entails. I literally had a plastic bag in case I hurled on this ride.
Oh
And so
no.
it's like to build up this thing in your head and to just be like, I need to have this perfect day with good weather that has short lines or whatever you go into it. There are so many stressed out families there. But to be present and be like, I don't have any control over why all of a sudden I'm like puking my brains out or, that it lined up on this very inconvenient day. I can either be upset about it or I can try to let this roll. To me has been so helpful. And for me, it's more of, learning from Taoism, a lot more of the kind of going with the river. And I know there's lots of great techniques out there. For you, are there either spiritual teachers or are there books or podcasters or just folks that you found helpful to help you with the idea of being more present?
Yeah, so faith is huge for me. So my faith in God is my grounding force. So that has been huge for me. And so when I'm walking to work, a lot of times I'm praying. But I also have a mentor that I work with who has taught me a lot about mindfulness and meditation. And I'm a huge fan of mindfulness and meditation as well. Just being still and doing a body scan and bringing yourself back to the present. Having a recentering phrase to bring yourself back to the present because our minds all wander. Just having that, whatever that is for you. For me, it is I am here, right now. And sometimes I need to say that a lot during a day because my mind will be all over the place and I'll be pulled in a lot of different distraction type of areas. But really, my grounding force for living in the present and connecting well and finding peace is my faith.
Hmm. Well, I think it's so important to figure out for ourselves, what is something that is greater than ourselves. I mean, this illusion of separateness that, we're all these individuals that are just, fighting for our own kind of piece of the pie compared to having some sense of community beyond ourselves, whether that's, through faith communities or through the work that we do or, however we conceptualize that as adults. I think it's so important to then inform how we choose to work. One of the last questions I ask Eric is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Yeah, I would want them to know that we have to know why we're climbing the mountain. And the reason I say that is I spent most of my career with sort of a broken operating system that kept always thinking I needed to do more, I needed to do more, I needed to do more. And I had to step back and figure out what was it that I actually really liked about my practice. And that was being in relationships with people. So I would tell people if everyone was listening, know what it is that you love about your job, about your practice, and figure out how to do more of that. For me, like I said, it's relationships. So I ask a lot of questions to my patients. How are you doing? People that I've known for 20 years, if they don't seem like themselves, I'll ask them what's going on. And then I'll be willing to meet them right where they are and walk the journey along with them. So I think it's important to know why it is we're doing what we're doing, but also knowing what is it? What is that thing about what we do that gives us energy and how can we do more of that?
So awesome. Eric, if people want to connect with you, if they want to follow your work, where should we send them?
Yeah, so my website is the easiest place to find me. It's just my name, ericrecker.com. I have a knockback burnout challenge that you can sign up for on there. It's just a series of emails to help if you feel like you're facing burnout. You can also link to my social media channels from there, information about my blog, book I wrote, and stuff like that. But that's kind of home base for me. I'd love to have a conversation if anyone is feeling stuck and would like to figure out how to get to the next step of the journey.
Well, thank you so much for talking burnout.
Thanks, Joe.
It's really easy to listen to a podcast like this, whether you're walking, running, working out, driving, doing the dishes, maybe just sitting and listening to it. It's easy to feel like this is the end, that you did something. And sure, you filled your brain with knowledge, you filled your brain with inspiration. But I want to challenge you to think through next steps around burnout and being present. This isn't going to be something that you just achieve, that you get there and you're like, oh, there I am. I'm present. Look at me. I'm amazing. It's going to be one of those things that it creeps in, it creeps out, you get distracted. But I want you to think through your own burnout a little bit. Maybe just be just a touch more aware than you were last week in regards to where are things easy in your practice? Where are things tough in your practice? I was just doing a consulting call with a small group of people I've worked with for a while. And there was a clinician that just got hired by the owner. And this was like 3 months ago. And this person is so full so quickly. And we were saying, okay, you have 3 other clinicians that are not filling up. What is it about that person? To just look at, okay, what's happening here? Where is it easy? Where is it just flowing? And that could be in your relationships, that could be in your business, that could be in your personal life, could be in your health. Look at where things are just flowing naturally. And I would say, around burnout, think that, but then also be observant around, when are you most distracted? When we have a lot on our plate, it's really hard to stay focused on the here and now. And so what brings you back? Figuring out that menu of items that might bring you back. So go do a little bit of homework after this episode. Take some action beyond just listening to this episode. And it could be as simple as setting a timer on your phone for 30 seconds, saying, I'm just going to pay attention to my breath. Or I'm going to just take a little bit to focus on each of the 5 senses. What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? All of the senses to just focus on. So figure out some way to implement what we talked about today. We could not do this podcast without our amazing sponsors. Therapy Notes is our sponsor today. They are the best electronic health records out there. We're friends with a bunch of billers. They love Therapy Notes. It makes it super easy for them. We're friends with a lot of people that do telehealth, and Therapy Notes has it embedded right within their EHR to do telehealth. They'll even help you transition from wherever you're at with your EHR into theirs totally for free as part of their onboarding. You can try Therapy Notes for free. Just use promo code Joe at checkout. That's JOE, so that they know this podcast sponsorship is working, but also so you get that free trial as well. Also, don't forget that we now have a full IT team that can do back-end support and website launches. If you just head over to practiceofthepractice.com, you'll see the services drop down, and go ahead and submit a ticket and talk to Jean and the team, and they'll get your website going, or they'll get your website updated. There's no reason to have an ugly website, so go check that out too. Thanks so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.